Hi.
Oh, yes. Hi. How are
Hi
you?
everyone! Yay!
How's
Everybody's
everybody?
nice! Girls! Mwah,
Doing well and being fierce despite everything.
That's
Yeah,
true. That's true. That's our motto, being fierce.
Indeed.
Sanam, our colleague Sanam was suggesting a motto was like, despise me if you dare.
That's so nice. Despise me if you dare.
That's why we need to bring in Sanam. Hi, Sanam, if wherever you're there. You're next on the lineup.
Yes, you're going to be with us.
Just wait for it.
How is everybody in the audience? Send us your comments and questions. And so, what's the topic today?
We are going to talk about feminist global activism for this session.
Wow, that's great.
What is it?
I think people has this conception that being feminist is, regards to your personal life or even more about public policies at home. So it must be kind of interesting to wonder, is there some global agenda for feminism? Is there feminism, global activism, etc.? And the Spice Girls actually met doing feminist global activism. So this is why we really wanted to address this issue. So yeah, before we go into the technicalities, anybody wants to say how they jumped into feminist global activism?
Let me think. When was that? The first time that do you remember the feminist global activism? Your first time
I
when
can't
you were
say there was
born in
a defining
1990?
moment. I don't know if
What?
there was any. I don't know if there was any defining moment, but it just came naturally as I began to learn and understand more. At first, as a student activist, you're talking about education as a right,
Yeah.
why it's supposed to be free, accessible, scientific. But then eventually, as you learn more and more, as you also you get exposed more and more, you begin to understand the interlinkages. So at first, I wasn't even thinking of myself as a feminist. That's my secret confession. But eventually, you embrace it, and then you don't realize that you are already becoming a feminist in your analysis, in your actions, everything. How about you?
Yeah.
I think for me that feminism is something that always intrigued me because I got exposed by a lot of injustices since I was a kid, and then see a lot of discrimination that is happening and etc. So I think that it's always like a topic that interests me so much. I read books about it during the college years. I tried to talk, intellectually about what's happening, and then the concept of it and etc. But then I think only when I went to this feminist organization that I really, really actually got exposed to the issue, and then also got exposed also to all the women from the grassroots that came, that they saying that they actually got displaced and their land was grabbed by Newmont, and then all of those stuff, and then it become more and more real for me, and then I think that's the time, especially when I take them to one of the UN meeting also, and then understanding, and then they are very, very much like, oh my God, this is UN meeting, and then they actually want to say what they want to say, right? And then it's kind of frustrating sometimes in that kind of forum. So the need to actually amplify that voices is what makes me want to be a feminist global activist, something like that. How about you, Amelia?
And I was thinking it's very interesting because, feminism, many women, thank you, Tete, for sharing that. Many women are feeling kind of hesitant in calling themselves feminists. And then when you come to the UN and you bring in the term feminists, it's also very bold, not everybody is willing to accept that we're having a feminist agenda, a feminist position, even feminist proposals. So they think that feminism is local, is on the ground, even on your personal life. And then there is a lot of commercialization of this agenda. And if you're wearing high heels, if you're wearing a lipstick, if you're wearing this perfume, then you're a feminist. This t-shirt, and now it's all blurred. Everybody calls themselves a feminist, but then it's not about saying who's more feminist than another person, but really it's about wondering what should be at the heart of the demands on the one hand, and what are the solutions we are proposing. But then when you come to the UN, it kind of makes like a clash between, so we want to make public policies, and then we want to bring feminist decolonial approach into the proposals, and member states are like, what is that? And yes, they don't know, are they going to take off their bras in the session or something? We haven't done that yet, by the way. We should write that down.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? We haven't
Philippines, we have a very rich tradition of women using their bodies, as weapons.
Yeah.
For instance, indigenous women in the north of the Philippines, when they were resisting a dam project to be built that will surely submerge their communities and their farms, oh my gosh, they formed a human chain, and then they took off their tops in front of the soldiers who were guarding those dam constructions. And all these soldiers, macho men, were at a loss, what to do. All of these boobs staring in front of us with our guns. So, that was a very powerful moment when women were able to successfully defend their communities, coming together.
Yes, that's the Greek play of Lysistrata right there, where there is this play, the Greek play. It's a comedy in which men are going to war and the women are saying, no, but war is really harming our local societies and our daily lives, so what are we going to do? And they said, let's go on a sex strike and let's not have any sex with our men until they realize that we want peace. So it's a very funny play, not only because it's also women taking ownership of their own sexuality, and it's like, but it's going to be very difficult for me as well. I don't want to go on a sex strike. But on the other end, also, the power of women's bodies and the role they play at the community level, and how they are getting the more impacted by war and by social conflict and by everything that is happening in the political sphere. Women are not isolated by that just because they've been relegated to the domestic realm. So I think that is really at the core of our conversation today on why even though women are seen as relegated to the domestic sphere, how is it that even at the global scale, the demands are right at that level and not just in a micro solution, smaller solutions or smaller measures, right?
Yeah.
So let's start.
Yes, and I'm gonna tell you why I started to use the term feminist in a more more professional manner, because you get to be in touch with it more personally in different ways. But hello, Adriana, thank you for being here. Can you help us show the slides to start kicking off the discussion? Because what I wanted to say is, when I realized about the macro dimension of gender, that is when I said we cannot dismiss this, and this is something that we need to talk very serious. We cannot just relegate it to something personal or ideological, or this is just about women's liberation and freedom. This map that you're seeing here is something produced by my team in Equidad de Género, Ciudadanía, Trabajo y Familia. So just a brief commercial on my NGO. But then, so this is a map showing what is it that when when society is split into, this is a gender society in which men are assigned some roles and women are assigned other roles. Women have been assigned to the domestic sphere, but women then produce some labor and value generated through that labor that is unpaid because it doesn't circulate in the market. So this map that I'm showing is very important because this is the map of the entire global economy. And so the map in yellow, what is showing all of the sections in yellow, it's the, let me go first before going into what is in the map. So this is a map that is not only showing the sexual division of labor, but also the monetized and non-monetized economy. Because our economy sometimes assigns value, economic value to some things, and sometimes it just says, I'm not going to pay for that, even though the value is there, and that is non-monetized value. So what we're seeing in this graph is that this is the entire global economy. And on the one hand, all of the sections in yellows are unpaid domestic and care work, meaning this is mostly work done by women. As you can see, it's holding the entire value generated in the world, but it's unpaid. So, and let me go first to the other segments before going back to the domestic and care work. The pink and slight violet segments, those two are monetized value. When you think about the global economy, you were talking about only this segment. You know, the purple and the violet, that is the entire global economy that economists recognize in the world. This is where the gates are. This is where our salary is represented. This is where, when we talk about the millions of the financial sector, the banks, the corporations, this is all of your savings. This is where there is money, where what we call it monetized economy. So you see that is a very small portion. It's like 1/3 of the world. And this is where economy is recognized by official economists, right? But you will see that the yellow segment is really produced by women and is unpaid, is unrecognized. It doesn't, what we call it monetized value, non-monetized value. It doesn't translate to a currency. They don't get paid a salary. They don't get any income out of that. And then in the stripes, the red and yellow stripes, you will see a segment that is volunteer work. This is where you will mostly find men, because men are also doing unpaid work. But this is in these stripes where men are going out to the community and, let's patrol at night to see that nobody wants to hurt us, or where they're building houses or roads just because they say we want to give something to the community. So men are also doing unpaid work, but it's mostly in that segment there. And you see the proportion is still amounting for the larger share of women doing all of the unpaid work on the one hand, but really you see the amount of value that is generated globally. And I like this graphic because you all see the trees and stuff. This is what is holding life. It's not only what is holding economy, because that is important, but it's also holding life, which is larger than economy, right? So this graphic is showing that. And then on the side of the monetized segment of the economy, you see again, let us go back to 1/3 of the graphic. You will have paid work. This is monetized work. That is all where there is money. And you see, let me tell you the first figure that is very shocking. Women own only 10% of the money that circulates in the world. 10% of the money that circulates in the world. So they are producing all of that yellow segment value, and then on the other, when there is money, they only have 10%, and the rest is in the hands of men. That is one figure that we need to be mindful. And just because I'm here very geeky giving figures, I'm going to say that women are owners of only 2% of the arable land in the world. So the world is that big, and women, who are 50% of the population, only own 2% of the arable land in the world. So, but you see again the contrast between what they own and what they produce, which is insane. And then if we go to the paid work, this is why we say from the feminist economy view that we cannot just keep on talking about employment. You know, ILO and all of the workers and everybody in the society say, oh, we need to generate employment. Oh, the corporations, they're helping us because they're generating employment, where employment is actually not enough, because it's a very tiny part of the generation of value. And this is why when we go to the paid segment, we also need to talk about formal and informal economy, or generation of value that is formal and that is informal. So when you go to the formal, let us go first in the informal, because it's that auto self-generating value, vendors in the streets, of small tasks, etc. And that is very important, because that is 60% of those who are working in the informal segments are women. 60% of the informal segment are women. And that gives you a first shot of the inequalities that are out there in the world, of who's not receiving pensions, paid vacations, access to social protection, etc. But then but let me finish on the paid work. And then you have the formal job. And again, in the formal job, of course, women are in the formal job as well, meaning women are not only generating unpaid or non-monetized value, but also monetized value. Women are generating money as well. That's what I want to say. But when we're generating money, either they're in their informal, or in the formal with gender wage gaps. So they're not paid the same as men. They are also facing with glass ceilings, so they cannot go to the decision-making positions. They need the glass windows, meaning they cannot go into different sectors. For instance, it is very tough on women to go into engineering or science, etc., and they're more allocated into specific sectors that are more related to their sexual division labor assigned, such as health, education, etc. So it's really, you see how even though they're getting all of the unfair slot of all the segments, really what I want to say. And I just wanted to point out the purple segment, which is the domestic and care workers, right? And that is also important, because that is also mostly women. You will find also more men in domestic and care workers, but also this purple section in the formal economy, in the paid economy, is also helping to support the pink one, and that is also what we call externalizing the burden, right? Because rich women, middle-class women are paying someone else to do the domestic work, so that they can go to the outside world. And that externalization is also done for migrant women, indigenous women, women who have had less access to opportunities and exercise of their human rights. And this also is a share where you can see many of the most blatant violations of human rights against women, like trafficking, exploitation, abuse, etc. So I just wanted to show this graph so that we can know with clarity how the feminist agenda is a macro agenda. The situation of women is not particular, individual, micro, at the small level. And then this is why I find it outrageous when governments say, yes, let's give microloans to women. It's like, no, how can I explain to you that they're generating all of this value, right? So I know I took a lot of time in the graphic, but maybe we can keep it there to hear the reactions from Tete and Rina about why the feminist agenda is a macro and global agenda. It's not a national agenda. It's not reduced to violence against women or sexual and reproductive health and rights or access to decision making. It is really at the core of how our societies are organized, including violence, including bodily autonomy, including decision making. But really, the core of the matters, when we're talking about oppression, it should touch on this as well. We cannot just leave it aside.
first of all, thank you so much for sharing that graphic. No, it's so beautiful, but it also
Yeah,
angers you. It angers you so much because
I
it
know.
it's indeed a representation, no, of why there is why gender is inequality is the starting point of all inequalities, no. And it's also very descriptive of how, unjust the current economic structure is, it's um so unjust because a lot of these big decisions arrived at the, global meetings, high level meetings, are usually done without women's participation. But whatever it is that they agree on would definitely have an impact on women, not
Yes.
just at the global level but up to the household level. So
Exactly.
I think that question really strikes close to my heart. Now, why are feminists fighting for economic justice? Because, for instance, um, we all know that a lot of governments now pursue privatization as a core policy. This is not just a national policy, but it's something that's been agreed on at higher levels, as a condition for governments getting more loans, as a condition for, whatever. But the impact is really felt at the ground level, because when you pursue a policy of privatization, what does it mean? Public services like health, education, housing, these are now privatized, and the pursuit now, the concentration now, is not to provide those public goods or services but to get profits, not to squeeze profits that will benefit only a handful while impacting everyone, not just women, but the whole household, the whole community, the whole country. So, it's really insane that those crucial policy directions or policy decisions are usually done without consideration for the gendered impacts that they would have. So I really feel that any self-respecting feminist should be fighting for economic justice. Yay!
Yes, yes, totally agree that. And then I also felt that graphic, yeah, and I felt that when I see that graphic, it's really show that how actually women is the one who subsidize the economy, right? And then how actually the current, economic system that we have is really use and treats women and girls as an endless and free resources, right? So this is really like unjust, and then for us, I think that I totally agree with that said that we actually the feminists needs to really talk about economic justice, because the current economy that we have, the capitalist economy that we have, is totally patriarchal, it's totally sexist, and then it's not only about like the situation of discrimination and human rights situation on how women vulnerable of human rights
Exactly.
impact because of the situation, because of the capitalist model, but it's also because this model is actually really often relies on systematic discrimination and disadvantages that experienced by women in order to really generate profit. So, and then we see
Yeah.
it everywhere, like we see it everywhere. I'm not really, can you believe that there is a data saying that we live in the world where women garment workers in Bangladesh in her entire lifetime actually earn less than the CEO of Inditex, which is the one who owns Zara. If you
Yeah.
actually have Zara, you know, actually earn less than the CEO of Inditex earns in just 4 days, right? So it's
Yeah.
really appalling the gap that we have, and then how women's resources, women's labor have been used, and then companies is actually rely on devaluation of women's work even in the paid sector, right? And then also those like what Ted said, right? Like the issue of the cutting of the public health, the cutting of a lot of things, essential public services, is also relies on women's role in unpaid care work, because they think, oh, there's women there to fill in the gaps in care, so it's okay for us to actually let this go. So this is really how this economy is really undervalued women, and then women, this is really gross undervaluation, I mean, and then that's why we actually need to really talk about economic justice as a feminist. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing? I'm so agitated. Because when I'm reflecting on it, it's like, okay, many of our countries, Indonesia, Philippines, Mexico, our governments pursue this policy of attracting foreign investors, right, in our country. And they really promote, the distinct advantage is that our skilled labor, mostly women in the garments industry, electronics industry, because women are supposed to be very meticulous. We're conditioned. We're brought up to know how to assemble things with finesse and delicate, etc. But in reality, we are paid only so little, and the profits from the work that we do, the products that these corporations sell, earn them super mega profits. So even if women are in the formal economy, they are exploited so much so that the super profits of all of these transnational corporations are guaranteed. No?
Yeah, the exploitation is everywhere. And I also wanted to say about the solutions. We really want structural solutions addressing the origin of these problems, because really when you hear about, oh, let's talk about new masculinities, I'm like, oh gosh, no, please don't talk about new masculinities. We don't talk about new femininities. We talk about feminism. Right? We're not talking about femininity at all. Nobody cares. That's totally irrelevant. Nobody cares really. Why? Because then the new masculinities are talking, yes, because now men should be crying because poor guys, they cannot cry. Or now it's so lovely to see the dads doing the dishes and going out to play with the kids. Like, no, you would just go and wash the toilet, cook dinner and go and buy the groceries. And really, on the one hand, the issue of new masculinities is that they're only going through the surface and not really addressing the sexual division of labor. But on the other, they don't recognize that the division should also be done, as Tete and Rina were pointing it out, with the public sector, the government, the state in itself, the private sector, the communities, families, and in the end, women and men. Because all of this work cannot be relying on the responsibility of individuals. And we really need to think of a system change. It's not a personal thing of, now I'm going to cry, but my woman is still working in the kitchen, cooking forever and for centuries without end, right? So it's like the system needs care systems and care infrastructure and a total renewal of policies for maternity leave, paternal leave, and spaces for care for people with disability, the chronic ill, HIV people, elder population, children, youth. It's not just children and little babies, the ones who need care. We all need care, and it has now been allocated on the one hand only on the shoulders of women, so that we're opposing subjects of rights. So let's undermine women's human rights so that we can address children's rights, and that's really bad on the one hand. But on the other, the other option is, okay, so let's bring the private sector so that they can profit from taking care of children or taking care of education and stuff. And this is also something that is really bad, because in the end it's only the rich women and only the rich classes that are going to be able to redistribute the tasks. And this is not what we want, because as you all mentioned also, this is intersected with class, with ethnicity, geographical status? What about our migrants? So it's not only going to be solved by having a company, okay, I'm going to charge you for taking care of your baby while you're in working hours, right? So it's really a systemic shift. And having men crying now is not going to do the job. It's like new masculinities is not going to do the job. We need system change, and men need also to start working on care and in this macro dimension, not thinking about how they can cry now at home. I'm very cynical, but it's really exhausting hearing them when you see the task ahead.
Yeah.
But what do you think about, all of these big UN meetings that talk about women empowerment? I don't see
No.
the buzzword nowadays.
I
So
hate
if
it.
we're talking about caring, recognizing
Nah.
the value of women's work, so why don't you tell everyone what do we find wrong with all of this nice buzzword about women's empowerment?
I mean, Rina, if you want, I can give you the floor, but no, if not, I can just go with my missile flashing through all of this
Go ahead
terminology.
first. Go ahead. I also have a story to tell about that, but go ahead first. Really.
Well, it's just that, empowerment leaves the responsibility on women. Let's empower women. So how are you going to empower them if they're holding the whole world? So that is first is the notion of power, as if you can give power to someone else. And Foucault already wrote on it on the 70s. Go back and read Foucault. Power is not something that you can own. It's something that circulates. So it's not that, I'm going to give you power. That's condescending. That's racist, undermining. That is really not understanding that it is actually the power of women holding on the entire society. It's actually adding more burden on them. So it's like, now you change, now you shift, now you take more responsibility. And why is your fault that you don't earn any income? Or just why don't you, I don't know, use lipstick or wear high heels or don't charge and go into this capacity building workshop? Is really burdening women, the notion of empowerment, and is deflecting on the one hand on the state because they are duty bearers. They have the mandate to guarantee women's human rights on the one hand, and on the others, they need to control corporations because corporations are doing all of these abuses. So they need to go into very harsher regulation on implementing gender mainstreaming and human rights in a broader systemic issues. So whenever somebody says women empowerment, I'm just feeling like either you're from a global north organization and you just want to feel good about yourself and you're so good with the poor people, or you're
Hey,
really
what's wrong with giving women in the global south with cooking stoves, no, so that they don't cook with firewood anymore, or providing access to microcredit so that they can start their own things and be empowered.
why don't we
Just
make
teasing
them
you
bring
both, huh?
Yeah, why don't we bring them more debt so that they're indebted even more and charge them 100 or 150% of interest rates because women need to be empowered and need to have some cash so that they can cook in their patios with no sanitation, with no protection, etc. So it's really undermining. It's really also violatory of the notion of human rights, women's human rights, in the notion of what are women, commodifying women. Women need to be useful for something, and they need to be comfortable. Women need to feel good about themselves so that they can go in the market and be exploited the best, right? So women's empowerment as CEOs so that they can be more of service to the market is like, no, please shut up. Empowerment is, I'm really super angry. I just don't want to hear about anybody talking about empowerment. I want to hear about women's human rights and gender equality in a bigger notion that is just women, right? Because also women empowerment, let's teach them how to cook. It's like, do you see that you're reproducing the stereotypes? If you're having anything aligning empowerment and social and traditional roles, get out of my sight. It's like the state and the society doesn't need your help. They're doing it fine on your own. You don't need to add more on that. It's like the lack of a proper assessment is that many people, and they're getting a lot of funding. Oh, we're empowering women, and they're just having women sewing, cooking, doing more of the things that are oppressing women. I'm not saying nobody should be cooking, but let's redistribute the cooking. Let's value cooking. Let's see how society needs to live up that, and not just value what corporations are doing while undermining the quality of life of women. So it's like, it's obscene. I don't want to hear about empowerment or resilience, but maybe, Rina, we can leave resilience for another segment. But it really pisses me off when you see the graph, and then you hear, but the solutions is women empowerment. It's like, Jesus.
So we cannot talk about resilience here. I really want to say about resilience. Next time.
No, go with resilience.
Next time. Okay. But I have something to say about women.
You mentioned about the story. Yeah.
So there's this one time the UN woman invited me to go to this side event, not back to back, during the HLPF about women economic empowerment, right? And then she chose me. I was about to say no to that because I don't want it, but then I see maybe this is the time for me to say how wrong it's that, right? So this is what I did. So in my speech, I said that like how women can be economically empowered if those women who are the women garment workers, for instance, right, who ask for that increased wage is actually silenced, arrested, and murdered, right? So that is actually their rights to have a decent work, right? So how can we talk about economic empowerment in that kind of sense? So that is also why I think that, and then a lot of it is also a lot of this bullshit, about women economic empowerment is proposed by IMF, World Bank, it, right? And then they always believe, how women empowerment is saying that, women are economically empowered when they actually have the agency to compete in the market, right? And then that is totally like really wrong, right? And then it actually what we wanted to say is how women able to actually strengthen their own capacity to exercise their real power and control over their own life and in the terms which they want to engage with. So not really necessarily market, right? So this is something that I really also have a very strong feeling about, Amelia. And
Yes.
And you know what? One more thing I hate so much is when during all of these discussions at the UN, for instance, they lump women together with vulnerable populations. It's women and vulnerable populations. It's like, excuse me, why do you lump us together? Yeah, it's so disempowering, and then you talk about empowering us. No, so it's so condescending. You're right, Emilia. No, it's so it really just angers you.
It's
without
insulting.
even asking you, what are the systemic and structural roots or causes of that vulnerability. Why are women vulnerable in the first place? It's not because we are the weaker sex, but because there are systems and structures that relegate us to certain roles in society and limit our own mobility to reach that potential. For instance, when you talk about the climate crisis, there's a lot of data that says when disasters strike, during moments of intense or extreme weather events, women are the most affected. More women than men die during these disasters. So I was thinking, is it because we can't run so fast, we can't swim so hard? That's why women are dying more than men in this situations? But no, because you have to consider what are the social norms existing that make women more vulnerable when disasters strike. For instance, we know in Asia, clothing. so many layers of clothing that restricts women's mobility.
Also,
That
yeah.
could be a factor. Those rules that says women cannot go out of the house without the company of a male
Yeah.
companion, that
Yeah.
could also limit their mobility and their ability to survive all of these disasters. So it's like, again, Rena, quoting Rena, don't give me that bullshit,
Yeah.
about women being vulnerable. If
I
you really
know.
want to get serious, let's talk about why women are perceived to be vulnerable and made
Yeah.
to be vulnerable.
Yeah, no, and I just wanted to say, acknowledge the audience, and they're as fired up as we are, and we see Faje also calling for system change, and Adriana and Mati says go with the missiles. We do need men to support universal and freely accessible childcare provided by the state as a human right, and also resilience, totally in agreement with our notion of resilience. And Cecilia also saying, grateful of the way we're framing women's empowerment in an economic manner, because really this is something that we really need to address. And Ellie says she loves the notion of unpacking the root causes of vulnerability. I just also wanted to add that it's you and women. Let me just go straight to it. It's you and women. Now you and women says our mandate is women's empowerment, and gender equality is like, let me remind you, is women's human rights and women's and gender equality. When you have those two, you will empower women. I don't want to say, oh no, we don't want women's empowerment anymore. We hate it. We want them to be submissive. No, I'm just saying, whenever a woman is allowed to exercise freely their human rights with their full potential, and not only the political or the cultural, but also the economic ones and the environmental ones, are when they have access to all of that, they are empowered. There is human rights empower people, community. So it's not about, oh, let's empower them first and let's see in how many centuries they achieve their rights. No, it's the other way around. And equality without discrimination, that is also empowering for people. They don't need to be self-empowered. It's the conditions around them that are going to empower them. So I'm just really fatigued of all of that empowerment. I just really want to go on a war with you and women whenever they bring up women's empowerment. I hate it. Let's organize that war.
That's why
Let's
we're
wage
saying,
that
that's
war.
why we're saying feminists
Let's.
want system change. No, we don't want those band-aid solutions to structural problems. Enough of the band-aid solutions. Let's rip out that cancer. And that cancer is this system that exploits and oppresses women. No, so maybe now we can go to this uplifting section about our work around systemic changes. How does this look like? No, and how are we making this happen? Maybe we can also ask our friends in the audience, how are we together co-creating, this systemic changes that
Yeah.
feministas really work for?
Yes, because let me say, some like Rina already said, the IMF, the World Bank, etc. You and women, they say it is really important to have gender equality so that they are useful for the economy. Then
Yeah.
economy, it is very good for economic growth. It is very good for profits. It increases efficiency. It's like, no, this is why we call, I'm going to start with a very awful word, commodification of women. It's like the well-being of women is good just for sales, not because it's a good in itself, because it's about the dignity and
Rights.
liberty and freedom of human people. No, it's about because it's good for the market, good for economic growth. And this is something that we need to see. When the UN is proposing gender equality is good for economic growth, that is where we need to come back with our balance and say what our activists are proposing that are real solutions, that are recognizing the dignity of women's lives by themselves, just because we're persons. We don't need to be helping profit someone else, or the economic growth or the GDP, just to be acknowledged on our exercising of our rights, right?
Totally agree. Totally.
These people, they don't understand.
Why suddenly we are so suddenly?
No, but Tete, do you want to walk
our
us?
feminist economic agenda? Now let's go back to our original question. What is a feminist economic agenda?
Well, I mean, Matt is already pointing out about the issue of going for systemic issues and really going anything provided by the state as human rights. So that is a larger point of entry, not only childcare, but also the care of elder population, but also changing the schedules, the office schedules. This is why women are also going more into informal or with outsourcing employment, because they think that they need to have more time to care, etc. So there are many ways of exploitation, and this is why it's very important to go back to saying that the state is not that we think that states are perfect, but we think the states have the mandate and the responsibility. So this is why we are shifting the way states are thinking, and this is why we go into UN spaces to go in and position this agenda. Because let me tell you, the last year with the conversation in the UN on the pandemic, it was a lot of tables on economic matters, and it was trade and tax and the chain of value, etc. No, in no table, gender equality was addressed as a cross-cutting issue. So it was like, and whenever they mentioned gender, it was like, yeah, but go back to the national policies, and then they should give them microloans or direct cash transfers, etc. So women are just considered as group of population in a national responsibility, but not in this global manner. So this is why all of these institutions are just getting it wrong from the beginning. And we were asking, where are all of these groups of, where is UN Women, where is where is a framing that is really coming from a human rights and gender equality and environmental integrity perspective? And there was none. And we know that none of those issues are going to be solved on the ground.
Yeah.
But then this is where we come with organizing, right? Because I find it so important that we're working in movements. It's not that, oh, I'm an expert, I'm a consultant, so let me tell you what I know. We learn from movements. We learn from the knowledge of people. The feminist movement, I find it very wise, because we have learned from our mistakes. And, in the decade of the 80s, it was like, oh, let's bring women into the markets. And we learned that wasn't the way. And then on the 90s, let's learn about the small scale produce for women. And we learned that wasn't the way, and we have been learning. But the feminist movement is very, very critical with itself and says, we tried that and we failed. But they're mapping all of that and writing down all of the failures and the details, so that don't go there. We really want to change really fast. So this is the way. So organizing, mobilizing, collective work is very important. You cannot learn this only on academia, on a single book, or just by reading it. Movements are at the heart of this knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And then also it's very, very inspiring. And then the way that they actually really, I mean, I'm also learning a lot from the movement, a lot of it is actually land rights movement, feminist land rights movement, also the trade unions, like women workers also doing the organizing, educating on human rights and labor rights and land rights, right? So that is actually really the key, like how we actually need to organize using a rights-based or human rights-based approach, right? So that is very, very important. And then also, like, the organizing work is crucial, and also how that can create a space for change the policies and in the national level or in the global level. So I think that is really the key for us. And then I think that as a feminist movement, we work really closely with the other movements. That is really also the key, very very key. We are not an elitist movement, because we are intersectional, right? So we really need to work with the other movement to be able to actually come together and bring that systemic change that we want, right? Yeah.
Woohoo! And I think that is also, where we draw our power from, our
Yeah.
rootedness in the communities, in the movement, so that the few of us who are able to access these spaces, like the UN, etc., we can bring those voices and those demands. It's not just storytelling, it's demanding accountability. No, I think that's also one thing that we need to clarify. We are not there just to tell the stories, excuse the word.
No.
We are there to demand accountability, that you guys, and definitely they're guys, they should do their jobs to ensure that these things, policies, programs that negatively affect women, people, and planet, this should all be changed. And I'm so inspired when women come together. It's really a lot of creativity and power. No, that's why we always say we are fierce,
Hey,
because
hey.
we are not scared to be bold and daring, and we're also not scared to laugh at ourselves and with
Yeah.
ourselves. No, that's why I think that's the natural attraction that we have, no, because we are so we're so innovative. Imagine, where else can you find women coming up with those powerful songs, chants, performances that convey a really strong message, and yet people sing to it, they dance to it, not because these are real life stories that we are able to tell while demanding for, justice, accountability, human rights. I'm
And
almost tempted to do my rap now.
yes! Go, Tete, go! Go, Tete, go!
Go. Come on, Tete.
Really? No practice? So, okay, due to insistent public demand by my sisters.
Yes!
So we
Sisters
did this
defense.
chant. We did this chant in Katowice in Poland, no, during the climate talks. And the women were really criticizing macho fascism. Governments of Bolsonaro, Duterte, Modi, and how they really collaborate with extractivist corporations. So we're so angered by that. And then we just thought of coming together. We sat down while writing interventions and also making up this chant. So, I'm sure everyone is familiar with "We Will Rock You" by Queen. Who doesn't know?
We will rock you.
Yes. But instead of saying "We will rock you," we will say, "We need you to wake up. Wake up. We need you to rise up.
Rise up.
Rise up." Okay? All
Okay.
right? Okay. And then the beat is like,
Yes.
all right?
I think that one
the
person
thing,
should do it.
yeah, because there is a delay with the sound I received from Tete and Rina, and then everybody's talking at their own bit, so it's gonna be like 3 times echo.
Okay.
We
So maybe I
support
can
you,
do
Tete.
You do it, Tete. You
Yeah.
do it, Tete.
it's just from memory, no practice. All right?
Okay.
Okay. A 5, 6, 7, 8. Buddy, you're a fascist. Buddy, you're a fascist, cold fan, stealing our lands, feeling you're the big man today. You've got blood on your hands, your head's in sand, spreading your lies all over the land. We need you to wake up, wake up. We need you to rise up, rise up. Activists build real plans, just plans. Shouting in the street, gonna change the whole world today. We've got solidarity, community, waving our banners all over the land. We need you to wake up, wake up. We need you to rise up, rise up. Okay, that's
One
the start.
more. Oh, there's another verse.
I forgot.
You remember all of that? That's amazing. I mean, like, woo.
Tata is like, no, I didn't practice it at all. And then she's like, yo, man, yo.
When you speak from the heart, you never go wrong.
That was great. That was great.
rock,
Do you have a
Tata.
video of that? Do we have a video of that?
We
do.
do
We should.
during the ground level people's forum. Remember?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
While preparing for the march, we were trying to inspire and work up the crowd.
Yeah.
crowd.
Amazing.
Well, you worked us out. I just wanted to say, because we have 4 minutes left, so time went by so quickly. Cecilia, if you all, si tienes alguna idea de cómo hablar más del empoderamiento económico, dinos y cuéntanos en el chat. And Ellie, yes, she's talking about outsourcing responsibility to the private sector means it will only be done for profit and only get done if it generates profit. And Fahe is also saying that she's really, really learning with the feminist heart. And Adriana says, stronger together. Yeah. And loving that song. That you can also start your own record, you know? You have enough material for
And then
your
she was like
record.
doing this. Oh my god. Woo!
But even she started like 5, 6, 7, 8.
I think we should have a This Spice Girls theme song, you know, and then we ask Tata to make it.
I agree.
We will all write it. Emilia writes,
I can write.
dope poetry. She
I can write.
help the government officials, all you a-holes, in beautiful poetry.
And I say thank you.
I hope some of the UN people are also watching us so they can see how we're making fun of them, no?
I mean, to be honest, there are people in the UN who are very good allies, and we're very grateful for them to be there holding the space. But we want the UN to speed up with and catch up with the times, because really we're seeing a huge emergency. And I mean, we didn't have enough time to talk about other elements within the feminist movement, so we should keep on talking in the next session when we will talk about decoloniality. So what is it to be feminist and being decolonial at the same time? Because this is the other thing. I have a huge criticism for feminism in the global north. You know, like I can just unleash my heart whenever I hear about the premises of global north feminism. And I think we need to stand up again with the global south, with our concepts, with our views, how we learned it, how we practice it, how we teach it, and not get imposed by all of these notions from the global north just because English is the main language. We also have our systems of learning and knowledge. And I think it's very important that we recognize and we transmit it and feel proud of that, the same way we feel proud about our collective fight.
Great. Yeah, totally agree. So when is that? The next session will be on the August 19th.
The colonial. Yes. So just before, because we close up, Cecilia says she thinks it's very important to dismantle the false idea of economic empowerment of women. She says we need to keep on doing it and raising our voices. Gracias, Cecilia.
Yay!
Okay, so it's very sad. It's about our time to say goodbye.
We hope you learned and had fun with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
See
let's
you in
prepare
2 weeks.
another song. Yes. Ciao.
Yes, sir.